Hi guys, my name is Praise and you're welcome to your Villa Fashion Hub. On this channel, I share sewing tutorials and sewing tips. So if you're interested in things like that, don't forget to subscribe, like and share my videos, and let's get right into the video. For this video, I'll be sewing this gala dress that has a zipper and also has straps at the back. This is my original design. I sketched it, made it, and I styled it. This is your sign to use your leftover fabrics to create something beautiful. So if you'll be creating this dress, don't forget to give me a shout out. Let's get right into it. I'll be using this leftover fabric that is barely half yard and 2 yards of this pink fabric. I'll be using this English lining, thread, my marker, my chalk, and these pattern papers that I'll be using to draft the top patterns. Let's get right into this video. For the front pattern, I'm going to be drawing my starting point and I'll be placing every other measurement after that starting point. So I went ahead to place my chest line at 8, my bust point at 10, my under bust at 13, my waist point at 16, and I added 1 inch allowance for the joining allowance. I will be drawing a line across those points like so, and I'll be labeling them. After labeling them, I will be marking out my neckline at 4 and my shoulder measurement divided by 2 at 8. I will be marking it on the shoulder line and on the chest line. Also, I have a straight line. Down on that armhole line, I will be going down by 1 inch and I'll be drawing a slant line towards the neck point like so. And the rest of the armhole line, I will be measuring it, finding the midpoint, and on that midpoint I'm going to go in by half an inch, and I'll be making a curve starting from the shoulder slant to the midpoint and to the chest line, so I have my armhole curve. Now I'll be placing my dart, and to do that I will be marking my nipple to nipple measurements on my bust point, on my under bust, waistline, and I'll be drawing a straight line. Now on the waistline, I'm going to be going out on both sides by half an inch, and I'll be using a slant line to connect that back to the bust point like so. And this is going to serve as my dart. The next thing I will be doing is to place my round measurement, and I will be placing my bust round divided by 4 on my bust point, my waist round divided by 4 on my waist point, and I'll be dragging down to the hemming line, and I'll be joining my waist point to my bust point like so and extending that line into the armhole. The next thing I will be doing is to mark out my bra cup. To do that, on the center front I will be going up on the under bust line with 1 inch, and I'll be making a curve towards the dart like so. And the next thing I will be doing is to mark out my neckline, and for my neckline I just want something very simple, so I went down on my chest line with half an inch, and I'll be drawing a line towards the neck like so. I'll be making it a little bit curvy, so I just use the curved part of the ruler to join it to the neck point like so, and this is going to be my neckline. Now the next thing I'll be doing is to add my allowance, and for the allowance on the waist point I'll be replacing my dart before adding my 1 inch sewing allowance, and then for the under bust and the bust point I will just be working with 1 inch allowance. Okay, so for the waist I replaced my dart, that is 1 inch, so I have 2 inches there. That way I will not be running short of fabric. So I went ahead to add every other allowance I needed to add on my pattern paper, and I will be cutting that out. Before cutting it out, I marked out the places that I will be adding stitching allowance when cutting it fabric. Now to cut it out, I went ahead to cut open from the under bust. So now I have 2 pieces for my front piece. For this part, I will be taking out the dart on my pattern paper because I don't want that to appear on the fabric. So I took out my dart and I will be cutting on a fold. I'll be using the pattern fabric for it. Okay, so I went ahead to fold my fabric in two and pinned it down, and I'll be cutting that out. I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of this particular pattern because I will be using the same piece as my lining for this part of the dress. Now after cutting it out. For the rest of my top front pieces, I went ahead to cut it out and I will be adjusting it. Now for the adjustment, I will be marking 1.5 inch from the midpoint to the shaping side. After marking those 1.5 inch points, I went ahead to count how many points I have, and I have about 5 points. Now I'm going to be dividing my shoulder by 5. So now I will be marking at about 3/4 of an inch so that I have 4 points at the shoulder and 1 point towards the armhole. So now I'll be joining those points like so. So I'm joining the first point on the shoulder to the first point on the underbust, second point on the underbust, and for the last point I will be joining it to the armhole area like so. Now I'm going to be slashing open these lines. After slashing open these lines, I will be placing it on a fresh pattern paper. On this fresh pattern paper, I went ahead to draw a straight line, and on that line, I will be placing my bust line on that line like so, making sure that it's matching up. I will be taping that down. Now from these first pieces, I'm going to measure about 1.5 inch from the first piece, and I'll be placing the second piece on that point. Now from the second piece to the third piece, I marked 1.5 inch and I placed the third piece at that point, and from the third piece to the fourth piece I marked another 1.5 inch, and then from the fourth piece to the final piece I have about 1.5 inch gap. Now after flashing and spreading the pieces, I'm going to join the tips of these pieces together, and I'll be cutting it out like that in a curve form. So just watch where I'm cutting out. Now I went ahead to draw arrows indicating that I will be adding at least 1/2 inch allowance to that point on my fabric. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, but I will be cutting this particular pattern on a fold. I don't even know why I'm spelling fold like this, but whatever. Maybe this is a sign that I'll get a car very soon. But that's by the way, you guys, back to the tutorial. I went ahead to pin this down on my fabric. Notice that I folded my fabric into two. So this midpoint is going to be at the edge of the folding on the fabric, okay? And I'm going to pin that down nicely and cut it out. So remember to add your joining allowance of 1/2 inch to this part of the pattern when you are cutting it. That's why we have that arrows there. And after cutting this pattern, I'm going to go ahead and cut my lining as well, and then I will be cutting my back pieces. For the back piece is quite straightforward. I went ahead to mark my starting point. I marked my chest line at 8, my bust point at 10, my under bust at 13, and my waistline at 16. I added 1 inch joining allowance, and I'm going to be labeling that real quick. I'm marking 1.5 inch on the shoulder line, on the chest line, and on the half length, and I'll be joining those points like this, and it's going to serve as my zipper allowance. Every other measurement I'll be placing on this back piece is going to be after that zipper allowance line. So I went ahead to mark out my neckline, shoulder measurement divided by 2, and I placed it on that shoulder line and on the chest line to get a straight line that will be serving as my armhole line. For the shoulder slope, on that armhole line I came down by 1 inch and I joined it using a slant line, okay? Now on that armhole line I found the midpoint, went in by 1/2 inch, joined the shoulder slope to the midpoint and to the chest line. The next thing I'll be doing is to mark out my darts. I placed my nipple to nipple measurements on my chest line, on my waistline, and I joined it with a straight line. Now on that waistline, I'll be going out by 1/2 inch on both sides and using a slant line to connect it back to the chest line. The next thing I'll be doing is to place my round measurements. I placed my bust round divided by 4 on my bust point and my waist round divided by 4 on my waist point as well. And I joined those points like so and extended the line to the chest line bar. And to adjust my zipper on that waistline, I came in by 3/4 of an inch and I'll be drawing a slant line towards the chest line like so. The next thing I will be doing is to mark out my neckline for my back zipper line. I went down by 1 inch, okay, and I'll be making a curve from that point to my shoulder like so, and I'll be extending it into the zipper. The next thing I'll be doing is to add my allowance. For the waistline I added 2 inches allowance, that is 1 inch for the darts and 1 inch for my actual sewing allowance. For the under bust I added 1 inch and replaced my dart, and for the bust point I added 1 inch and also replaced my dart at this point. I'll be adding every other allowance on the pattern paper, and I will be cutting that out real quick. And that is all for my back piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Now I will be folding out my darts because I don't want my darts to appear on my fabric. So I'm going to fold it out on the pattern paper, and I'll be taping that down. Now I'm going to be cutting out this pattern on my main fabric, okay, and I'll be cutting it on the plain fabric. Because I want to cut two of the back patterns together, I went ahead to fold my fabric into two and placed my pattern, pinned it down real quick, and I will be cutting it out. Now after cutting it out on my main fabric, I went ahead to also cut out the same pattern on my lining fabric. Okay, this is what I have for the back piece. Now I will also be cutting out the pattern for the flowery pieces that is at the back where the straps are going to be going in, and to do that is very much simple. Slash open this back pattern from the chest line like so, adjust my zipper. So that's 1.5 inch I took out from the zipper. I replaced it back and I made a slant line to join the zipper. Now after doing that, I will be coming in from that point, from that zipper line by 2 inches, and I'll be joining with a slant line. So I went ahead to cut out that point, and I'll be cutting 4 pieces of this pattern on my flowery fabric. I went ahead to indicate the points where I will be adding my loop on the pattern paper. This way is easier. Okay, so I'll be having about 6 loops at the back, so I'm going to be cutting that out on my fabric as well. Now after cutting it out, this is what I have. I went ahead to cut out my sleeve. This is a basic sleeve, and I'll be adding elastic to the hems of the sleeve to make it a bob sleeve. I went ahead to cut out a very long straight pieces that is about 3 times my waist measurement. I cut out 2 pieces of this, divided one of those pieces into 2. So I'll be using one for each part of the back, and then the longer one for the front piece. So these are all the patterns we were able to cut out on this video. We cut out the front piece, the back piece, the extra detail for the back, and the fabric that will be gathering for the skirt part. I will be uploading the sewing tutorial as soon as possible. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in my next video.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals, they take us higher. The night's young.